Hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Energy Intersects, I think is what we're calling this. This is where me and Lauren Armstrong go live to talk a little bit about human design and psychology and energy and consciousness and all the things, like just all the things. And so today, not self-theme, self-theme. Hello, how y'all doing?
Hello, all the things,
Hello.
all the things.
All the things. I'm so excited. I'm like, we're talking about everything.
Everything. I love it. Especially because we were doing energy flows for CEOs, which is so perfect.
I love how it just all comes together.
So good.
Because then we're like, let's talk about this. And then that related to what we talked about last time. So last time we talked a little bit about your authority and all that. And now that helps you make decisions. So definitely go check that out. I have it saved as a series under my IG lives. So check that out. But today we want to talk a little bit about not self-theme, self-theme.
Yeah.
There's a couple of them.
What the heck does it mean?
What does it even mean? Tell me.
Tell me what it means.
What's it mean?
It's
okay, so there's a couple, right? So not too many. We don't need to overwhelm. Let's go through.
We will not overwhelm. Take what you need, as always. Personal sovereignty here. Take what you need. Take what resonates. Leave the rest.
Totally.
But it's so fun, right? Because there's like not self themes and self themes in human design, and people are like, what does this mean? But then they see the word after not self theme. So for generators, manifesting generators, you see the word frustrated, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's me. Right? And you're like, oh, I'm frustrated a lot. Or when I'm in that not aligned place, I go to frustration commonly. And so that's kind of just our indicator. So every type has its own self-theme and not self-theme. So not self-theme meaning when you're out of alignment, right? When you're doing things that aren't in alignment with your type, your strategy, and your authority from a human design perspective, you might be feeling this not self-theme. And it's just a signpost, right? We're not going to make ourselves bad or wrong. It's just like, oh, and I love the way that you say it's just information.
Totally. Yeah, it's just information. It's like the contrast to, like you said, signpost, guide us where to go next. So for mine being a generator is frustration. And I noticed recently when I was like editing a really long video, I was just getting so annoyed because iMovie was so slow and I want to be fast and on it. And I was like, because this is not my zone of genius. This is not my zone of genius. But not making myself wrong for it, right? Just looking at, okay, what else could I choose? Like, does that mean I need to have someone else do this for me? What would that create to free up some space?
I love it. So that's for a generator or a manifesting generator, your not self-theme is going to be frustration. Like, where are you frustrated? What is that signpost when you're doing the thing that's like, ugh, I'm so frustrated here. What could you choose and what could be more satisfying? So on the other end of that, like if we're looking at it as there's like a pendulum, it's like one swing all the way to the side is frustration, and on the other side is satisfaction. So like where are you deeply satisfied? Where do you forget to eat, sleep, and pee because like you're doing the work that you love to do in the world, right? Like, oh, I'm so satisfied. Like I used my energy in such delightful ways today. And that's really the way that it shows up for generators and manifesting generators. Does that track?
Okay, wait, I just like made this huge connection. Like, I don't know if this will resonate, but it's like, okay, so if my self-theme is satisfaction, and then for me, I have the sacral authority, I was like, oh, so it's when I go, ooh, or like I'm already in that vibrational sense, like it all just comes together that I can like feel it. Like that's my audible sensation of satisfaction even.
Yep.
Oh, so amazing.
Yeah. I love it. And what's so fun is like, okay, so when you're following your type, your strategy, and your authority, that equals your self-theme. So satisfaction. So as a generator who's doing work you love to do, because you're here to do work that you love as a generator, right? You're here to work on something that like you forget to eat, sleep, and pee when you're doing like that. You're here to be deeply satisfied. So when you're doing the work that you love to do and you're following your authority, meaning you're only saying yes to the things that are actually for you. So for you, things that make your body go, right?
Totally.
Yummy, right? Like all that stuff. So when you're following your type and your strategy, it's like waiting to respond. for a generator, so like you're responding to life instead of being like, I have to think it all up and I have to make it happen and I have to initiate. It's like, ooh, no, what could it look like to light yourself up, do things that bring you joy, bring you satisfaction, watch things come to you and respond with and like that's just your guidepost to satisfaction.
Yeah, I can really see how also this in particular, and we'll get to the other types, but like how it can get in trouble for like manifestors in or generators in the sense of like I could just go, 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 go and like muscle through the frustration, the not satisfaction for, you know, years and stay at a 9 to 5 that was incongruent for because I could do it, right? But it's like still that it's like crushing your soul slowly but surely.
It's like there's so much like beauty in that conversation of like you have the energy for it as a generator. And so it's like, where are you giving your energy to the shoulds? Well, I could do it. I should do it. I'll make money doing it. But like, really, this is not what lights my soul on fire when I forget to eat, sleep, and pee when I do. I keep saying it. It makes me giggle. But it's like really the energy of like, when you're in it, you're like, oh my gosh, hours have passed.
Yeah.
I forgot that I was working.
Yeah, because I love to eat. And so for me to like forget or to be in the moment or actually not have an appetite because I'm so excited about what I'm doing, like that's just such a clear indicator too.
Yeah, it's where are you deeply satisfied. So this indicator, these signposts, this information, this pendulum is like, okay, well, are you going to be fully, completely satisfied every moment of every day? Like, no, like we live in the 3D reality and world, like taxes are a perfect example, right? They just happen to like, well, they don't light me up. No, yeah. Well, how would prison feel? You know, like
not satisfying,
right? But it's like, okay, well, so could you have an accountant do them for you, or could you, you know, like where can you outsource, or where can you like bring more joy into the thing that you have to do? Like, it's having those conversations with yourself of like, where am I deeply frustrated? What can I shift to make myself feel more satisfied and be in satisfaction more of the time? And the number one indicator that I see for generators of being in this frustrated place versus in the satisfied place is when we're not following our strategy. And your strategy as a generator is to respond, not to initiate. So it's like, instead of thinking with your mind and you're like, I'm going to go run with all of these things, and then you're frustrated because it's not working out, it's like, hold on a second. What if the universe could create that or co-create that with you? What if it could bring you something that you then get to respond to? What would feel fun? What would feel easy? What would feel light? And ask for it. Call it to you. You don't have to make everything happen by yourself.
That's so interesting. So like a couple things. I'm thinking first, like Abraham Hicks, their conversation around being in the vortex or not, right? It's kind of like the contrast is what gives you the information. So it's like your not self theme is the contrast of when you're just not there in the flow. And then I thought of something and now it left me. There was something on that.
You were responding to something you said.
Oh, thank you. It was about responding. Yes, because I was just like, that is really confusing a little bit in the sense because I find that, or I found that with the responding, it's just very easy for when like a client asks me a question for me to like respond to it versus to like initiate things. And so I've just noticed that in general, it's just amazing how they all like come together to inform how the energy functions.
Totally. And I like a really specific example of this, which I love, and I like watch you create from this place, which is really fun, is instead of like what I feel like a lot of people who are like joining the entrepreneurial space do is they say, okay, I have this idea for a program or a course, and then they start running with it, which is great and beautiful and wonderful. And what would it look like for you to like live your life lit up and be in response as a generator or a manifesting generator to, hey, this is what people are asking you, or this is what I'm really noticing is missing in the world, or like whatever, right? It's the outside world informing you, hey, what about this? And then you get to respond with or because it's going to be the correct thing for you. So like I noticed for you, when people ask you stuff, then you're like, oh my gosh, okay, let's go. Like, now totally. The energy is there. The engines are on. Like we're like, excuse the analogy, but like we're putting coal in the fire on the engine. It's like, let's go. Like that really is how the sacral works. It works in response. So you're not going to have the energy to do unless it's in response.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I really love, and like what I teach folks too is asking questions. So being able to like even ask your questions or ask questions of your business to ping the energy, or for me to get like information back so I can respond to it. Like,
Yeah.
would this create greater if I chose this? Are you for now or for later, right? Or even just like pinging my audience or whatnot to just get feedback. So, and I can see where then all of a sudden that just like takes off the energy.
Yeah. Versus being like, I got to create this thing. And then
Mm,
it's like sludge in the mud and then
yeah,
you're frustrated.
it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
we got satisfaction, frustration. What's
Yes.
another not
So
same?
that's for generators and
Okay.
manifesting generators, but manifesting generators, I'm going to put a little bit more into this for you after I go over manifestors. So I'll do manifestors
Okay.
next.
Cool.
So manifestors are, about 9% of the population. And really the way that this shows up for them is when they're in alignment. Again, buzzword just means
Yeah.
following your type, strategy, and authority. You're going to feel this deep sense of peace.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
It's working out. There's a clear path. Like manifestors, I like to feel through and talk through like they're vessels for energy from the other side, like vessel of information, like come
Yeah.
through. You're here to initiate. You're here to get things started, right? You're not here to wait. And so when you're not self, like when you are waiting, when you're putting yourself in a box, when you're trying to respond, like the generators respond, you're gonna feel really angry. So that's your not self theme. I have a fellow Manny that I like love chatting with, and she always says like, I'm not angry, I'm just pissy. And I'm like, okay, yeah, same
Same
thing.
thing.
Different language, and it's fine. And also a really interesting conversation around why is anger not allowed? Like anger has
Oh,
been like
totally.
this persona non grata, like emotion, like we're not allowed to have, especially as
Yes.
women.
Well, I mean, I love the idea. This really resonates with me that whenever you are angry or frustrated, that a lie is present, spoken or
Ooh,
unspoken,
yeah.
right? So it's kind of like, and that really resonates with the not self theme that it's
Mm-hmm.
like you're following a lie or you're like living by a lie or however that's informing that.
Yeah. You're not following what's correct for you,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. So like incorrectness is
Yeah.
present.
Yeah. I mean, not again, it's like, it's just
Not
kind of what's
wrong.
going to create greater. So what, okay, so because if we can just look at the vibrational frequencies and experience of like
Mm-hmm.
satisfaction versus peace,
Yeah.
how, I mean, I sense I have an idea, but like, how would you kind of, if you could put that into words, like how they're different?
Yeah, it's so funny. Like because even people who don't know their design
Mm-hmm.
will say those words. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like what's resonating for you and your body. So for example, like all the generators say, "Oh, I'm so frustrated." I'm like, "Yeah, you're a
Yeah.
generator." Like
You're like, I know your type.
you just dead giveaway. You are a
Yeah.
generator. Versus like, "Oh, it makes me so angry when," and a manifestor will say that. And so it's really hard for me to say from an energetic vibration what that is objectively because it is within other people's lived
Yeah.
experiences, like
Yeah.
within their bodies. It's like
Interesting.
it's those signposts, like so. And for projectors, it's like bitter versus success.
Interesting. That is
So the,
so different already for because like
uh,
satisfaction, peace, I get this, but like success, I'm like, how do you even like how does that feel to you?
yeah, and that's the question, right? It's like, what does success feel like?
Yeah.
Because there is a universal conversation around like what success is, like what it's
Hmm.
conditioned to be, but like how do you actually feel successful and what does success feel like in your body? And when was the last time you felt successful? And like that kind of conversation comes in too. But then even with the not self, with bitter, like bitter versus frustrated, that's a very different vibrational frequency,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And I love to talk about bitter as all like annoyed,
Hmm.
resentful,
Hmm.
right? Like those are really common kind of like more modern words for like I don't walk around being like I'm so bitter, but I do say like I'm so annoyed. Like
Is there like a thread of like almost envy with like the resent, like kind of wishing you had, or like the lack, something about that?
so there's for projectors specifically, it's really
Yeah.
interesting, right? Because when you follow your type, your strategy, your authority, you get this like aligned feeling, which for projectors is success.
Hmm.
Well, when you're out of alignment, you're one following one of three things. You're not following your type, you're not following your strategy, or you're not following your authority. Like literally, this is a majority of design. So like if people could just play with this on a daily basis, like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, imagine what could open up for you. So for projectors specifically, our strategy is to wait for the invitation. And so when we're not following that, that's where bitterness comes in. And so what that looks like oftentimes, and I can speak to this so clearly, and when I learned this about myself, I was like, oh my God, like I'm being dragged right now. Like this is so true for me. But when you give unsolicited advice and people don't follow it, where
Mm-hmm.
you're like, I told you what to do and you didn't do it. And now I'm just so annoyed because you're telling me the same story you freaking told me last week. And I already told you the answer and you're not following it and you're not telling me what to do. And I'm just like so annoyed. Like, why aren't you doing what I say to do? Well, no one invited me
Mm-hmm.
to share that. There was no energetic space for that advice to land in the other because they weren't actually asking for my advice or opinion. So it's this place of when you don't give unsolicited advice, even because, like, even though you see things, I know projectors, I know, like, even though you see it
Yeah.
and
So
it's
what
so clear.
what is the difference then? So if like a generator is to respond and for you as a
Mm-hmm.
projector, it's to wait for the invitation.
Yep.
How is that different, like energetically?
Yeah. So for a generator and a manifesting generator, so manifesting
Right.
generators, this applies to you as well, but it's like, it's really around responding to life. Your body is designed to respond. That sacral center is like that coal that you're putting in that fire to keep going is your response. It's like your natural response to life. So like you could literally respond to a billboard and you're like,
Yeah.
ooh, yeah, uh-huh. Like, and you got the energy to
Yeah,
roll
yeah.
with it. And you're like, I'm going to keep going. I have this
Yeah.
engine that is keeping me rolling, and I have consistent access to this engine as long as I'm responding to life, right?
Mm,
So, and then you're designed to do that. You're designed to move with that. For projectors, what's so interesting is that we have an undefined sacral center, and sacral center is the thing that generators and manifesting generators all have defined. So they're like,
right.
like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
responding to life. It's your response mechanism. But
Mm-hmm.
projectors don't have a consistent access to respond. Like responding is not natural for us.
Yeah.
I don't go through life being like, like that's not really natural for me. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Like I'm observing it, but it doesn't like light me up and like have me put coal on my engine. It's like, oh, that's, that's cool. Right.
Yeah.
So energetically, it's not this thing that I'm moving through life, allowing myself to like keep going. It's more of, oh, I see the world differently. It's like I have this different perspective, this bird's eye view. So instead of doing the things that light me up, I'm like seeing the way things can be done more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I'm recognized, is the whole thing about waiting for the invitation is you need to be recognized before you're invited. So, hey, Lauren, I love the way you see this. And I would really love your perspective. Oh my gosh, really? Like, and, right? And then I get to then say, be like, well, like I get to share my insight and wisdom, which is a very different energy than just responding, not just respond,
Yeah.
but to respond to life. And you get to do that all day, every day.
Okay.
It's,
So like I have this like great analogy, I think. I've
I love it.
decided.
I can't wait. I can't wait. I
So
love
like let's
analogies.
say, we're at a wedding and we're guests at a wedding and they're passing appetizers. And as a generator, I see the appetizer and it's like bacon wrapped dates or something fabulous like that.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, ooh, that looks good because I saw it. I'm responding to it. And so
Uh-huh.
then I like head on over and like help myself.
And you're
Versus,
satisfied.
I'm so satisfied. Versus for you, like you could see it, cool, but it's like kind of like the waiter would have to come over to you. Hey, Lauren, would you like a bacon wrap date? And then you could, is that enough
Sure.
invitation?
Yeah. And so
Would
what's
you
so
say?
interesting is I love that analogy. And like for a projector, you don't need an invitation to everything. Like I don't need an
Okay.
invitation for the bacon wrap date. I could be like, oh, I love bacon wrap dates. Like I want to eat that. But I do need an invitation in order to lead and guide, in order to
Mm-hmm.
use my energy
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have that consistent access to it the way that a generator or a manifesting generator would. It's just a different type of energy. I have this seeing energy that's really consistent for me, like the way that I view the world. So
Yeah.
it's more like I don't need an invitation for everything. And I think that's a lot of where projectors kind of get in our own traps. Like, I haven't been invited. It's like, okay, well, like,
You have to initiate something
yeah,
somehow, kind of.
like don't starve,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you can eat without
yeah.
without an invitation. But when you're leading and guiding someone, like that's really where like the bitterness comes in, is like
Yeah.
when you're leading and guiding without an invitation versus when you're leading and guiding with this recognition, with this invitation, where your advice is going to be taken and run with, and there's space for it to land. And like that feels so deeply satisfying
Mm.
for and successful for a projector.
Okay, so I'm guessing then there's something about how you define success, like in your
Hmm.
head, of then how energetically it's going to feel for you. Because again, I'm like, is success a feeling, an emotion? Like,
Yeah.
what is it? And
Yeah.
unless we define, like, well, I made this accomplishment, that accomplishment, so I'm successful or whatever. So is it kind of
Yeah.
different for everyone, or how does that work?
Yeah. Yeah. Normally when I work with projectors, that's like one of the first conversations we have is like, what does success mean to you? And then we get all of like the cultural conditioning out of what success has
Yeah,
been taught to
yeah,
mean.
yeah.
And then really like, ooh, okay, well, if you were going to talk about what success was and where you felt it in your body, where do you feel in your body? Can you describe the last time you
Mm,
felt successful? What were you doing when you
yeah.
felt successful? What was, like those kinds of conversations are really helpful. And I don't know, like on Instagram and on TikTok lately, there's this fun Gary V kind of, thing where it's like 3 billion people or 8 billion people, whatever the number is, need to redefine their definition of success.
No, yeah,
You've heard that, like that
yeah.
sound that's kind of going around. Well, Gary Vee is a projector. So it's so
That makes sense.
funny to me that
Yeah.
he's like, yeah, it's like, yeah. So what does it look like if your aligned theme is like your abundance, is your financial indicator, is
Mhm.
your like your your energy kind of like monetary value. It's like
Yeah.
that you receive in the world. It's like, oh, I'm feeling deeply satisfied a majority of the time. Well, the
Mhm.
money flows because you're at a higher vibration,
Yeah.
right? It's like the law of attraction sort of situation. So instead of looking at, which I love to talk about, instead of looking at like the dollar amount that a lot of people are trying to like go for, it's like, what do you feel? Are you
Mhm.
deeply satisfied? Go for the feeling. What type strategy authority? Feel the feeling.
Feel the feeling. Well, yeah, and right from this idea that money follows joy. Yes, I'm trying to like, I'm like, do I have that right? In the sense of vibrational frequency, right? When you're following your self theme, you're just naturally kind of magnetizing that to you, so that then
Yeah.
that becomes kind of ultimately the success.
Yeah.
I need to
It's
like,
almost
I'll
like
have to listen to your like spiel a couple times. It's like, I feel like that's really advanced what you're just saying there.
it's advanced, but it's also like the most basic stuff. Like it's like,
Yeah.
oh, when I'm doing the things that light me up and bring me joy and are
Yeah.
deeply satisfying, my like reward chip in this simulation of life is a token of money. It's like if you think about
Yeah.
us in a video game, or it's like, oh, we're following the things that light us up, we're following the breadcrumbs. Okay, thank you for the tokens.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like the
what did it?
byproduct of it.
Yeah, because it's not the money's not the thing. It's the feeling that the money brings. Which when you're in the
No.
feeling,
Yeah.
you call the money in.
Yeah, it's so crazy because it's like, yes, there's a lot of focus on that. And ultimately, it's just the byproduct of you following your joy and then ultimately like magnetizing more people to you and shooting for the feeling that you desire to have, like whatever money creates, whether it be freedom, choice, space. I mean, like just ability to create your day, ability to travel with ease, the ability to buy a house that you want. It's just all of those sensations that we're desiring, but then kind of focused on the money. That's like not even about that.
Yeah, and like all totally guilty, like completely
Oh,
and
I mean,
totally
yeah.
guilty
Let's
of
like,
like
yeah,
to
we're
be.
all there with you.
Where's the money? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
focusing on it. Let's get the strategy to
yes,
get the money to make
yeah,
it happen, so that I can feel successful, so that I don't ever have to work, or
totally.
whatever that is for you. Um, and it's like, ooh, okay, what is the feeling, and what is it for each of the different types, because it has a little bit of a different flavor. And so instead
Mm-hmm.
of taking on like what everyone else says their satisfaction is, or their success is, or their peace looks like, or so manifesting generators have this beautiful combination of pithy, angry, and frustrated, like because they're an MG, right? So the manifesting generator. So the generator part gives that
Combo.
frustration flavor. The
Yeah.
manifestor part gives that anger flavor, and then all the way on the other side, there's this peaceful slash satisfied vibe. So if you're an
Mm-hmm.
MG watching, being like, "Wait, you said you were gonna get back to me," like that. Those are those. And then for if we have any reflectors, for you, you're like 1% of the population, which like come and chat with me.
I
So
think my
to
husband's
share
a
with you.
reflector, actually.
Wait, your husband is a reflector?
I'm pretty sure. I have to double check, but I'm pretty sure he was like the rarest. He's also an Aquarius, so he's like the most rare gem of all. But
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Yeah.
We have to talk about this on
Mm-hmm.
WhatsApp. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, give me
was that the okay, like let's actually like acknowledge that, because that was a really interesting interaction, because I was like the information I was providing and then kind of like lit you up. It was almost like the invitation for information. Was it like similar to that?
Yeah, because I'm like, ooh, but notice even in my body language how you were like, oh, I was like, oh, and I leaned back.
Yes.
Right, like even like because my energy as a projector, our energy is really like penetrating, like good enough reason to use the word penetrate. Like our aura is like very like slicing, like, ooh, I'm gonna get to the heart of the point or whatever. So it's like, ooh, where can I soften this and be like, if you're open to this, I would really love to play with that, right? Like,
yeah. So it's like almost like you back off.
yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Because if I was like, oh my gosh, send me his chart right now, you'd be like, whoa, like that's very strong. Like now I don't know if I even want you to like look at it, right? It's like, where is it too much? Like for the other, it's like softening.
Yeah,
softening.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so reflectors, what's their deal?
Oh yeah, so reflectors. You have your not self theme, or like when you're out of alignment, really looks like really disappointment. So it's like, oh, this is really disappointing. And I would just will say for anybody who's a reflector on the in the human design world, it's like really important that you're surrounding yourself with humans who you like love and want to be like, and like people in your world that are like toxic. It's like, oh, you're going to take on a lot of that energy as a reflector because you're reflecting who you're around. Whole other side note. But when you are in alignment, it's like surprise and delight. So it's like, oh, look at that. Like, how cool is that? I know someone who has a reflector daughter who she says she tries to surprise like every single day with something little, like a new toy or like a love note in her lunchbox, or like something to be like, oh, like the reflector surprise and delight is just like a really beautiful kind of energy. So
I love that. Oh my gosh. I know. I was trying to think of like, I'm like, my husband doesn't like surprises. So I was like, what's that about? Now I'm like, I'll try to figure it out.
No, I'm like, what is it? Chart? I want to know so many things.
How then, so now that people have a general idea of their self-theme, not self-theme, how can we apply this more easily in business, right? I know we're talking about this. You talk to entrepreneurs. I have my energy flows for CEOs, and I'm constantly talking about this, about like, being able to access more of you, show up more authentically, and function energetically in a way that feels good. Ultimately, it's like I get that I'm like using kind of more blanketed statements because I'm really loving like getting specific. So how is it that people can use their self-themes to like guide where they're going?
Yeah. I love this because it's literally a pendulum. So when we're not going to make ourselves bad or wrong or judge, like if you're on here and you're like, I'm frustrated all the freaking time, it's like, cool, that's so amazing, because that's so much information. It's like, what are you doing that's making you feel frustrated? Like when you do X, you feel frustrated, right? Like get it out, write it down, evaluate it, be like, instead of having it all up here in your mind and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this, right? Be really objective about it. Okay, these are the things that don't light me up, that don't bring me joy. So same for things that make you bitter as a projector, things that make you angry as a manifester, things that make you like really disappointed as a reflector. And so if you're talking about that from a business perspective, you get to go, okay, now on the other side, what makes me super satisfied? Like at the end of the day, if I feel super satisfied and I'm going to bed feeling delightfully exhausted, what did I do that day? Was it filled with coaching calls? Was it filled with lives? Was it filled, like, what was that thing? What are those things? And it's kind of like that zone of genius conversation, right? How can I do that more often? And how can I get rid of, automate, systematize all the things that make me feel my not self theme? And so it's really just like this beautiful roadmap that is going to be different for every single person.
Yeah.
And so what I love that you're doing around the energy is not saying, okay, here's how to like systematize, automate all these things that I don't like doing, and here's my map and you do it too. It's like, well, that's going to be different for every single human because there's no one right way.
No. And I really got that early on in therapy, because it's like we were taught all these like evidence-based treatments, and it was like session 1, you do this, and session 2, you do this. And it was very much like cognitive behavioral is very structured that way. Wow. And as a new therapist at the time, many years ago, it was like nice to follow that. But like very quickly I realized, I'm like, but people don't show up like that, not everyone is the same. And so like, right, I abandoned that pretty quickly on, where I was like, I can't do structured treatment. That doesn't. So then as I entered the business world, I was like, wait a second, you know, kind of looking for like, well, how did you do it? Well, how did you do it? Well, how did you do it? You know, almost like wanting the like once again, the template approach.
Yeah.
And it kind of just like clicked recently for me where I was like, but no, 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 because it's like, how have I done it? But it's like, I've just kind of learned a little bit from all over the place and then followed my intuitive things. I mean, like most of my decisions are literally just following like, ooh, like this morning I got excited to, you know, really kind of keep or get the energy flows. Like I was like, oh, now's the time. Like all of a sudden this morning, it was just like today. I was like, okay, let's go. You know what I mean? It's like the energy of it, but I had to tap into it energetically first because I was before almost like making myself wrong because I wanted to start it sooner and like maybe a month ago, but it was just, it was like, meh, meh, meh. And so I was like, okay, I just need to be patient and I'll just, when it's time, it's time. And then all of a sudden and then that was like helpful for me to like respond. And then it was satisfying this morning to like just get it out and answer questions and all the things. So it's like so cool when it just comes together because then it's fast, efficient, and fun. And like as a generator, how's it better than that?
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you appreciate too, but
yeah, well, but like so freaking satisfying, right? And
yeah.
instead of having like when you're like, oh, I would have liked to have started that, you know, a while ago. It's like that is so like opens up this like even more fun conversation of okay, well, that's what your mind desires, but like your mind is just the passenger in the vehicle. Like it doesn't get to drive, it doesn't get to make the decisions. What would it look like to follow your authority, which we talked about in our last like little jam out session. So if you didn't see that, go see that one. Yeah. So it's like, ooh, okay, so if your body and the energy is making the decision and gives you information and we're following the flow and where the information goes, and then we get to be like deeply satisfied all the time versus like getting into judgment about, well, I didn't start it last week. Well, if you started it last week, it would have been slow and freaking frustrating. And what I see a lot from generators, especially in the business space, when they start that way, then they get frustrated to the point of they abandon the idea or the thing altogether.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that your beautiful creation, like it just needed space to evolve into what it needed to be.
Yeah. And this is where it's like really asking the questions rather than coming to a conclusion of like, well, I should do it now, or now's the time, or this is the right thing to do, this is the right way to market or whatever, but asking, okay, are you for now or for later? Well, and just like continuing to stay present with it because also the energy changes of the thing that you're creating, right? Depending on kind of all sorts of things, all sorts of possibilities and timelines, it can shift. And so sometimes like when I get an initial sense of like, ooh, I think this is for now, sometimes I'm in the future. You know what I mean? So it's helpful to also ask, is this for now or for later? Because it's like, I can sense that it has a lot of potential, but if I like kind of institute it too early, like what you're saying, you almost like kill the creation if you're not kind of tapped into where it's at.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fun. Did you have something this morning? I'm just like really curious the way this shows up.
What do
Did
you
you
mean?
have something like this morning that like had you like respond and be like, ooh, now's the time? Like did something in your external
God,
awareness or
something.
environment pop for you today that was like, oh yeah, let's go?
Yeah. I'm trying to think for a second. Oh, you know what? Actually, like someone who I've worked with applied, and it was not someone who I like assumed would and or just choose it or whatnot. It was not in my mind. And I was like, and like there's such a beautiful energy that I was like, oh my God, okay, yes. You know, it was just kind of like, so it was literally the application that came through that was like, oh, because I know them, I've worked with them for a while one-on-one. And I was just like, oh, this is gonna like I could start to get a sense more of like the people that will be in it, and it's just gonna be like, and so it was
Juicy.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
really juicy.
you responded.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm glad you asked that because I was trying to remember because I know in the morning, like I was like frustrated initially. Like Bucky was like, time to feed me. Like, okay, I want to meditate, you know, and like get tune inward. And no, we have to feed him first and then I can, but
Yeah.
so then I was like checking my emails while he like was eating. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
and then that was the, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So it got me
Yeah.
excited.
I love
Yeah.
that. It's
Oh
such
my
a fun
God.
example. And then like I know too, like I've talked with you at points around like situations and areas in my business or in my life where I'm like, oh, I'm really bitter, or I'm really resentful, or like I'm not making
Yeah.
the kind of money that I want to make. And like I go into this like mind drama when I'm in the not self theme. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you're trying to fix it, from like, I'm not willing to shift anything. I just want to be in this like mind drop of space for a minute. Nothing gets to change, right? It's like,
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to think my way out of this. It's like, where do we get into the energy and asking those questions that you ask so beautifully? It's like, oh, okay, that this is what I get to shift. This is what I get to choose. What would feel light to choose? It's like, oh, I don't have to stay in this place. Right. I get to move into the other side of the pendulum.
Well, it's so much about allowance, right? So in the sense of just like being in allowance right where you're at, even if it's in the and it's like not where you want to be, because like how much do we resist not being in the vortex and just like, oh, I'm not manifesting or manifesting bad thing, you know, or whatever that is. They're just kind of like, oh, okay, can we just be in allowance, have some ease with this? Because ultimately the allowance is what's going to create the ability for us to move through it much faster. I mean, I'm like, what about the byproduct? So I'm going to move through it much faster. Okay, well, I'll try to be in some allowance.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, okay.
Make it, rip off the Band-Aid. Like, make it happen. Yeah.
I'll be fine. Yeah, it was kind of like with allowance, I always tell folks, like when we first moved to Texas a couple of years ago, even though it was like part of my choice and chose it very willingly. So I just had a lot of internal resistance about it. I was like, oh, it's hot. I want to be there. There's bugs. And like for the first year, I was like just really stuck on that and realizing, okay, well, what is this creating for me? Is this really creating the experience I want? And what else could I choose? And then it was like, okay, what do I feel gratitude for here? What do I like about it here? And then by just offering myself that space and the questions, and then being in allowance of being frustrated, like in the sense like, okay, you can be frustrated as long as you want. Go for it. And then it was like, oh, but I don't want to. I want to be over this now. Then there was like the willingness to shift out of it. So I'm wondering how
that's so good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was like, I felt that like when I'm in the bitter, like when I'm in annoyed and I'm like, okay, I know there's a way out of this, but like, I'm annoyed. Like, just let me feel, and being willing to feel that. I totally relate, just on the bitter scale versus the frustrated scale.
You're bitter and I'm frustrated. Cheers.
Cheers. And it's all welcome. It's all allowed, and there's no judgment. And
it is
deeply satisfied and deeply successful.
It is. And again, it's just like you said, the helpful guidance post. I love that because it's just like kind of showing us, okay, what else could you choose? What else is possible, right? And if you've got a judgment, if you had an interesting point of view about it, what would you choose now? Just to free
and
yourself
I think
up.
it's fun too, because like I love the way that you talk about like the consciousness. It's like what it's pinging, what's in your awareness. So now you're aware of this pendulum and you're aware of these signposts, and you get to go throughout your day and be like, what am I feeling? Am I frustrated or am I more satisfied? Like, what am I doing right now that's making me feel, oh, okay, that's interesting. There's more information. Because the first step is always awareness.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I love that you asked me that question because I probably wouldn't have even thought about that. Like, what was the first thing that pinged the satisfaction to get going? More of it, please. So what have you got going on right now these days? What are you inviting people to?
Oh, lots of things. Speaking of leveraging, I think you used the word earlier. I'm like, that's my favorite word. I have a program called Leverage, which helps you leverage your human design in your business. So like basically what we've been talking about today.
Yes, check it out.
That's cool. There's a link in my bio if that's interesting to you. And then for you, you have energy flows.
Energy flows. Yes. Exactly. Energy flows for CEOs. It's like this brand new program. I basically worked with a beta group of entrepreneurs to just get a sense of like where people are at, where they're stuck, what are the problems, what's going on, and how can we look at it from an energetic perspective? Like how can you create your business in a way that is conscious, that you're responding to it. Of course, that came from me, but in the sense of like, how are you communicating with it right now? I'm going to hear myself constantly. How are you communicating with it and be able to ping it so that you get these kind of guidance posts and awareness to guide you to create it with ease? So it's like the opposite of the template marketing sales situation. So if it pings you, applications are going right now. So let me know. You can DM me if you want more info.
So fun.
Oh my God, so fun. All right, y'all. Well, we'll see you in 2 weeks. I think it's like Cinco de Mayo. So
fun.
I know, right? Well, we talked about that.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything for her to respond to, or
I know,
recognize me for?
Please ask a question because that helps me.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
Thank
you
you,
can
friends.
invite Miss Lauren to something.
Yeah, please. Oh, it's like the ultimate like feel good
Yeah.
moment.
All right, y'all. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Bye.
Bye.